Hello there, lovely listeners, and welcome back deep down into the red rabbit hole. You're here again. We're very pleased to have you back. We're glad you keep coming back anyway. And of course, you couldn't hold yourself from coming back because we have the lovely Anne Coates with us here again. Anne, how was your week?
I didn't have to do anything. So,
Oh,
no
you liked
domestic
it.
chores.
Just right, quick, get that on TripAdvisor right now. 5 stars, fantastic. She loved it. She liked the hay. She liked the mud coffee and the fruit and fibre. We've finally got a good review, Nick.
It was almost like a spa.
That's true. We did say me time. It is, it's there's low tech. There's no Wi-Fi, so you can't check any emails. You can't, it's just time to relax.
No one can get hold of you. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what, actually, I'm thinking the same as mothers. Somebody saying, "Oh, you're going to be down a deep dark hole on your own for a week." You might go, "Yeah, all right, yeah." Sounds good.
I'm on board.
Bit of peace and quiet. Yeah, you mean my family can't come? That's good. That's really good. Thanks. And Nicky, you're here.
Of course I am. I'm here. I'm willing and ready, and
You didn't decide to take some sort of early morning jog during the week and
or
place yourself at
hitchhike
risk.
anywhere. No.
Yeah, you didn't hitchhike, jog, or change professions.
Nope, nothing
during
like
the
that.
week.
No. Well,
Is it cost of living? Yeah,
it's not like I didn't think of all three. Yeah, cost of living.
it is. Well, actually, and I think that's a really, I say that as a joke, but it's a really good point. We're talking about the kind of vulnerability, or we were talking last week, weren't we, about the vulnerability of young women. And you were telling us about this interview when you spoke to this young woman who was a sex worker, and just her history, her experiences, and the fact that, and it's not a hard and fast rule, and it doesn't happen to everyone, but those kind of experiences create that vulnerability to becoming engaged in sex work or becoming addicted to drugs. And then becoming increasingly vulnerable. These things can become, I think, a bit of a vicious cycle. And it's hard to find your way out of that. So I think we can all, we shouldn't think of ourselves as a million miles away from being in a much more vulnerable position. I think, isn't it like you're only a couple of paychecks potentially away from finding yourself homeless or finding yourself in real difficulty because of the way in which we set our lives up?
Yeah, I think the homelessness thing, I think, is three events almost that happen, and then you're homeless. And I did quite a lot of research on that for something completely different. And
another rabbit hole. I like it.
Let's go down another rabbit hole. And one of the stories I heard was a man who had been, a company director. It was his own company and all that. And first of all, his health went to pot. He discovered his wife was having an affair. And then he discovered that his wife was having an affair with his business partner. Everything went to pot. And eventually, having moved to Spain, he had to come back to the UK because of his health. And he was homeless. So from living, what would have been rather a splendid lifestyle, he was on the streets. I'd never, ever look at anybody and think, oh, they must have done something daft, or they haven't worked, or they haven't done this, that, and the other. Any one of us could be there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And Lisa, when you said to me about, like, have you ever considered it? Considering it this week, I just thought, well,
exclusive listeners.
No, with the cost of living the way it is, then I might have to give up my car, so I might have to hitchhike. I might have to give up my gym membership, so I'd be jogging, and I might have to indulge in a secondary career in terms of something else. So I would be like triply. I might as well just literally lay down and let a serial killer just have me. Because a jogging, hitchhiking prostitute is not a good look.
We are not glamorizing serial killers on this podcast, listeners. Just so you know, we don't want to lay down and let them have us.
No.
But also, I think it just is a really good point from all of that the kind of experiences can lead us into all sorts of directions. And actually, just because you've had this beginning or this beginning, it doesn't map out your path. and things can change. Because just to say, because I don't want people to feel like, if you're vulnerable and you've had a difficult childhood, that means you will end up on a particular pathway, because actually that's not at all the truth. But it just, these things, as you say, and a few events, a few things can really make major changes. And it is, and I think we sometimes have that attitude, and I think we particularly did in the 90s. I think things have shifted a little bit now, but kind of seeing people, seeing women who might need to engage in prostitution, or people who are homeless as, like you say, lazy, or they've brought this on themselves, they've done this themselves, or they're a million miles away from me because they're a horrible person. And it's not at all. They all have their own stories, and we're not a million miles away from it. So talking of making ourselves vulnerable to serial killers, shall we have a little crime off?
Oh, please. I've been waiting.
With bated breath all week. You've been thinking, who are they going to say? I was the same, actually, and I was like, all week, who am I going to present for this?
Were you? Well, as I'm guessing I'm going first, as you're still researching.
Yeah, right now, yep. Just
I'd like you to make a note of that, Anne.
Okay, yeah.
Lack of preparation.
You prepare to fail if you fail to prepare. Okay, so Anne, I'm sure you've heard of this one. Everybody's heard of this one in the UK. So my serial killer I'm putting forward to you is the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe.
Right.
Do you remember when he was out and about?
Oh, indeed. Yes.
Yeah, the whole kind of the horrible spree, I guess, that he did. And what I would like to mention, though, and this probably goes for Lisa's case, I don't know what Lisa's case is, but I'm going to suggest it anyway, is that even though a lot of these killers do target prostitutes, number one, that doesn't mean to say the prostitute did anything wrong. That just means to say they were in a vulnerable position. But also, a lot of women, a lot of victims weren't actually prostitutes, and they were just thrown in there for the media to get a good story out of, to be able to say, well, these were bad girls, so they deserved it, but if you're a good girl, you'll be all right. And that was definitely part of the Yorkshire Ripper's kind of, not that he did it, but I think the media did it around him. So there was almost like a false sense of security in terms of, people like women thinking, well, I'm not a prostitute, so I'm safe, I can walk the streets. Well, no, because he wasn't just targeting prostitutes.
Was that the same when we talked about Jack the Ripper?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so some of those women were considered to be prostitutes and they weren't.
Yeah, there was a recent book where a lady, I think it was Hallie Rubenhold, was called The Five. It was the canonical five. So the five victims that are attributed to Jack the Ripper were all considered prostitutes. He killed prostitutes. Well, actually, when she looked into it, only 2 of them were prostitutes. The other 3 were just very down on their luck. And unfortunately, in Whitechapel at that time, a lot of people had to sleep on the streets if they didn't have the penny to stay in the giant house filled with coffins, and had to sleep in a coffin, which is what you had to do, or sleep on the rope, wasn't it?
Yes.
Like put your head on the rope for like half a penny, and then they'd pull the rope out from under you in the morning, so you can...
See, penny does get you something.
Well, it did then. I don't think it would even get you that now. But yeah, so the Yorkshire Ripper, again, a lot of this is just the stuff we know. So allegedly he was active between 75 and 80, so that's 5 years. I'm going to assume he was active for way more than that. And he was convicted of, I think it was 13 deaths. But again, 13 murders. Again, he probably killed many others that are just down as missing, that nobody figured out was actually part of him. I can't imagine in 5 years he would kill that few with the kind of, I suppose, the frenzy that he did it in. And it was so, and it I mean, this was definitely something that was played out more in the media than anything else. So in terms of, I mean, with your background and with your research, what's your kind of feelings on the case?
Well, blimey. Well, apart from anything else, people don't suddenly become murderers.
No.
And or do sexual assault. So their sexual assaults usually start, and I'm going to put this in inverted commas, sort of minor assaults, but they're still assaults, and build up because they don't get the same thrill, and et cetera, et cetera. So I would think that there's possibly murders well before the ones that he was actually convicted of, because he would have been practiced. They practice.
There's probably a lot of, I suppose, a lot of attacks and a lot of perhaps, like I said, missing people that are attributed to him.
There also will be women who got away.
Yeah, I think there wasn't there?
Yes, but that some of them won't ever come forward for obvious reasons. So there could have been much earlier ones where he thought he'd left somebody dead for dead and they weren't, or that they were badly beaten up but survived, but they didn't go forward because they had reasons of their own not to contact the police. And let's face it, the women weren't given, still aren't given much leeway when it comes to sexual assault and things like that with the police.
Well, no, especially someone who is a sex worker, because there's that whole kind of, well, a sex worker can't be raped. A sex worker puts herself in that position. Well, no, I'm sorry, they can. Yeah. And it's not the same at all. But back then, I can imagine they perhaps wouldn't have come forward, like you said.
And also, if you were a totally innocent, well, I say innocent again in inverted commas, but you might have other reasons for not, because your husband would have had, or your partner may have had, strange views on what you would have been doing to encourage an attack, that sort of thing. So women keep silent for all sorts of reasons.
I mean, there was a lot of victims, basically, a lot of victims. A couple of them were definitely not known sex workers, although got kind of bandied in by the media. There's not much in the way of kind of, I mean, in terms of sort of, we don't like to kind of dwell here on the murders or how they happened, but he was a bludgeoner. He wasn't a ripper. So how he got that name, I suppose, was actually more to do with the fact they thought he was killing prostitutes than his MO.
And
which is
linking it
quite
back to Jack
interesting.
Ripper.
Yeah. Which kind of makes everything, you just think, well, nothing's right. And it's not good. And he even dumped one of this poor 16-year-old, Jane McDonald. He actually dumped her body in a playground that had been found by children. So he was a particularly nasty man. However, I did hear a very, it's not a funny story, but a kind of justice warming story regarding when he was in Broadmoor. I think it was one of the Craze brothers had a go at him because they were the kind of London gangster scene were very pro women and were respectful and did not like the way he targeted women, and so he had to watch his back in Broadmoor.
Good to hear.
Yes, but I don't think you want to be known for harming women or children in a male prison. Then or now, in fact, I think.
Yeah.
So perhaps in prisons there is more respect for women and vulnerable women than there is out on the streets and from the justice system.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's where we've got to, which feels right that that's where we've got to, but also I'm not entirely sure I'm comfortable with it.
No. So, Anne, there you go. There's the Yorkshire Ripper. Like I said, I'm sure you kind of perhaps remember the case if you were, working in the media at the time. Lisa, what have you got?
Well, let's hop across the pond because...
Oh, let me get my wellies on.
Yeah, pop your wellies on. We're going to hop across the pond over to the United States to have a look at the Green River Killer. So Gary Ridgway is known as the Green River Killer, and he is one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. He grew up near Seattle, Washington, and began his killing spree in 1982. And like the Yorkshire Ripper, or the suggestion of the Yorkshire Ripper, was that he primarily targeted sex workers and young women in vulnerable situations, such as runaways. So he's kind of known for targeting prostitutes, but a lot of it was also not just, I shouldn't have said just then, but vulnerable young women were who he would target. He was initially convicted of 48 murders, but later confessed to killing as many as 80 women.
Oh.
Yeah. He was
well, he has the higher body count.
He does, yes. If we were playing top trumps, which we're not. But his MO was not bludgeoning; it was strangulation, and he often used ligatures, and he would dispose of their bodies remote wooded areas around the Green River, which is what kind of led to his nickname. So a little better on the nickname front, I think, for the Green. I want to say Green Ridgeway Killer, but that's just me mixing up his name, the Green River Killer, than we did get for the Yorkshire Ripper, because actually that's incorrect. It does not. That is not how he. That was not his modus operandi. He was active for 2 decades. So yeah, 20 years he was active, and he wasn't caught until 2001 when advancements in DNA profiling allowed investigators to link Ridgway to several murders, leading to his arrest in 2003. He entered a plea bargain, confessing to 49 murders in exchange for life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, thus avoiding the death penalty. And he's still incarcerated at the moment. And yes, he did particularly target sex workers with the belief that they wouldn't be noticed as missing, which
He
sounds
was right.
absolutely awful. But yeah, he got away with it for 20 years. So because they might have like smaller support networks, so people wouldn't be looking for them, people wouldn't raise the alarm as quickly, it perhaps wouldn't be quite as out of character to not come home for a few days or whatever that might look like. And yeah, he did manage to get away with it for a long time. In his childhood, he did have a difficult home life. He was the middle child in a family of 3 boys, and his mother was described as being domineering, and he did witness some quite violent arguments between his parents. I'm just going to say that when I said earlier that my husband does what I tell him, I'm not domineering. I'm not domineering, and I hope my children will turn out all right. Just going to come in there with that. And his father was a bus driver, who frequently complained about the presence of sex workers when he was out on his route. He struggled academically due to dyslexia, which led to him being held back a year, which of course we can do in America and we don't do here. So it helped, and I wonder how he felt or how he experienced that, how that might have been seen by others around him. And he did at 16, he stabbed a 6-year-old boy, and he explained it was an experiment to see how stabbing worked. How that's that's dark, isn't it? Yes, and he kind of showed early signs of violent tendencies, which you might expect, but he did manage to maintain a facade of normalcy, graduating from high school and serving in the US Navy, which in this case was absolutely not helpful, was it? Was just teaching him probably not
More skills.
Yeah. I was going to say teaching him discipline. Maybe that's what they thought. Oh, let's teach him some discipline. But ultimately, we just felt it taught him more skills and probably the ability to
tie a good knot.
Have the discipline. Yeah.
Spinach out of a can.
Tie good ligatures and be able to have the discipline to kind of control himself and keep himself out of view, I suppose, from the authorities. Yeah, and it did, because he targeted his targeting strategy was methodological. I'm not reading this. No,
Methodical?
I'm obviously not reading this. I am reading this, and it is methodical. Nicky didn't give me much warning, all right? Just saying. Just if you're making any special allowances for people, his targeting strategy was methodical, exploiting the vulnerabilities of his victims, who were often marginalized and lacked strong social support networks. And this allowed him to continue with his killing spree for 20 years. Whoa. Yeah.
What are
And
your thoughts, Anne?
Right. It's a bit of an unfair comparison, really, because not only would I have read about the Yorkshire Ripper contemporaneously, there have been so many programmes on him, and both fictionalised and not fictionalised. So yes, I think it's a bit unfair in a way, but I would be towards Lisa.
No, it's all right. I'll take it.
Well, can I wade in with an extra points round, Anne?
No.
Because yes,
No. Stop making up rules,
no,
Nicky. All
no.
right, go on then.
Because little known fact that when the Green River Killer was at his peak, Ted Bundy, to avoid being put to death, said he would profile the Green River Killer to catch him, just
Oh.
like Hannibal Lecter. hmm
Oh wow. Did they say yes?
They did. They said
Wow.
yes. He didn't. I'm not sure he did a particularly good job. But it gave him a little stay. I mean, obviously he did get put to death, but it gave him. They didn't say he could live forever, but they just gave him a stay of execution.
Oh, that's icky. That's very icky because that feels to me like Bundy just getting back some control. Like that's just Bundy manipulating people again, isn't it?
But there was a big hoo-ha around the time because at the same time you've got John Wayne Gacy that's coming out in the
Yeah.
news, and you've also got the BTK killer. And as
Mm.
John Wayne Gacy's body count was hitting the news, the Green River Killer was pissed off because his body count was obviously much larger and he was getting no news, because John Wayne Gacy was now in the news, had displaced him. And then you've also got BTK, who decides he also wants the news. And although he had been inactive for a bit and pretty much gotten away with it, decides to send a disc to the police. First, he asked the police and said, if I send you a disc, can you tell where it's come from? Answer honestly. And they said, no, we can't tell where it's come from. And he goes and sends a disc because he wants the newspapers to talk about him. And that's what got him caught.
Kind of got the image of them all like in a classroom in
Miss.
being annoyed that their work's not getting displayed up on the board.
The
Like,
email.
oh, what?
Yeah,
I've done great. I've done more murders than him. Oh, put
Mhm.
my picture up, miss.
yeah.
Oh, gosh.
How that hasn't ended up a film, I have no idea.
Oh, what's the one? Is it Mindhunter? Is
Yeah,
that the one where they got the
how the
profiling in it and they're
profiling
all in there?
started.
I didn't, do you know what? It hadn't occurred to me that they were all active around the same time. I mean,
Mm.
that's a really bad time to take up jogging, sex work, or hitchhiking, isn't it? Really? That was not the time to be doing any of those things in America.
The heyday of serial killers was kind of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, which is probably why Anne was one of the reasons perhaps you set your books in the 90s.
Yes, yeah. I mean, well, especially the first one, especially because of it was actually the interviews were done then, so that was that's what held me to it. But what is quite interesting, I think, from a writer's point of view, and obviously we fictionalize everything, but the number of people who've said to me, "Oh well, you're a single mother and a freelance journalist, etc., etc. Hannah is obviously you." And I've actually set her where I live as well in London. So fair enough. But of course, it is. I'm not a bit like Hannah in many ways. I, she's my sort of alter ego, and doing things that I wouldn't have the guts to do. But then I turned around to them and said, "But I also have written The Killers." And so I don't go out murdering people. I haven't been a prostitute. All these different things that you put yourself into the mind of your characters. And I think Virginia Woolf said, whatever you write is the product of whatever you've read, heard, talked to, etc., etc. It's a complete product coming from you. And
Yeah.
so it's not just because I'm a freelance journalist and single mother.
We've had that we've kind of talked a little bit about that before when we were talking about where you might go down a rabbit hole thinking you're going to find something, and actually what you find is very different, sort of attitudes. And we've sort of gone off the perhaps why sex workers are particularly vulnerable to some of the perceptions of them in society and how that adds to their vulnerability. So you kind of head down one rabbit hole, but then end up skirting down another one.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, sorry, for me, my books often start off with an image, and that may be the dead person, usually is the image of the dead person, who may not be in the first chapter of the book, but will be very early on. And so it's the image that takes me down a rabbit hole to find out about that person.
Well, give me a new idea of how I can catch authors.
No, no.
Like put up a little picture, hold up a little image on a card at the front of the rabbit hole and see if I can entice them down.
Oh
Literally like a little
no.
carrot. Come this way, come this way. Hop, hop, hop.
You do realise all you need to do to lure authors is to say, I will give you a review on Amazon if you come down this hole. Okay. I need every review I can get.
Oh, that's what's going to be the picture on the card. 5-star reviews this way.
No, just, you know what? Just an honest review. You
Oh,
doesn't have to
okay.
be 5 stars. An
Oh,
honest
just
review.
an honest review. Okay.
I'd rather have an honest one, as I'm sure Anne would, because they make more difference.
Oh no, I mean I'm not an author, which is probably why I'm like, no, I'm only up for 5-star reviews. No, anything less than that, now I'm deleting it. It's not good enough.
Sometimes when people say to me, I didn't leave 5 stars because I thought it would look as though, you know, it would look too good, you know, or I, and I thought, I don't care, leave 5 stars.
Yeah.
And I once had a review that said it was one of the best books they've ever read, and then they gave me 3 stars.
Oh yes.
And I was like, what do I have to do for those 3 stars? Come to your house and read it to you at bedtime?
Yeah, I have seen that on so many authors have had that, and you think exactly, what do I have to do for you? You know?
Yeah.
But we have an average, and it will ruin the average. If people aren't actually reading the reviews, they're just looking at how many stars the book's got, then it just drops our average right down, and it's not even deserved. I mean, if they didn't like the book, then fair enough. But to actually say they loved it and do that, I'm just like, oh my God.
My very first review, I think it was almost one of the first reviews I had for Dancers, was, I think it must have been via NetGalley, because it, you know, that was the way it went. And this woman gave me 1 star. And it turned out, I traced it in the end. I mean, I didn't trace her, but she was.
Did you? Oh,
Found her address.
It's like every author's dream to trace those 1-star reviews. Turn up at their house.
Found
and
her
demand.
address, her usual weekly schedule. Not that you go down rabbit holes for research into serial killers, but still.
She said, I hated the baby in that book. I would have thrown that baby against a wall. And I thought, my goodness. I mean, they took down that review, obviously, for good reason. But
I think a quick call to social services is in order.
You know when sometimes you may be a bit annoyed at something and you want to write an email and you have to consciously say to yourself, oh no, I need to walk away from the minute. I'm not in the right frame of mind to write this. Maybe the same should apply for reviews. You know, before you write that review, let's type it out and then go and have a cup of tea and come back. See
yes,
if you still feel the same about what you've written.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, reviews are so personal anyway. You know, what I like, Nicky, you probably won't like, and vice versa, you know, and it doesn't really matter. And one of the things that I find is that very, very few authors can surprise me, because I've worked in fiction for such a long time. But that doesn't mean to say that I don't enjoy their books, because I love the way they've worked out how to reveal the protagonist, you know, the killer or whatever, you know. So it doesn't really make that much difference. I remember reading one book, and you knew who the killer. Well, I certainly knew who the killer was from about page 2. But what was so fascinating was how that killer would actually be brought to justice.
So, Anne, have you got any new books coming out soon? Have you got another one in the series coming out? I know you said you've got 6.
There's 6 already out. The last one came out last November, which coincided with me having an accident. So I'm still trying to sort of generate an interest in that, as it were. And as it came out in November last year, and it is a lead up to Christmas book, so I'm trying to plug that one again. So that one is Murder in the Lady Chapel. And it's set in my local church, in fact, and it's a chorister who dies. And so Hannah actually joins the choir for her many sins.
Have you joined the choir, Anne? Yeah.
Yes, I did. That was. I am in the choir now. Yes. But then, it gives you lots more. I would have had to have been in a choir to have written that book.
The kind of detail that you need. You need to have first-hand
Yes, and
experience, don't you?
And the feeling. To get the feeling, of what
also
it's
to know
like to sing
how
with
the
others.
dynamics work. Sort of like if there's rivalry between the altos and sopranos, or if somebody always turns up drunk to rehearsals, or
Do they, Anne? Do
not,
they? Is this?
of course not. Of course not. All
Aw.
those sorts of things, and who gets the solos, maybe. I mean, that doesn't actually happen in my book, but if you don't know that, and if you don't know how a musical director works with a choir, you need that information or experience. Put it that way. I think you need that experience.
So we are going to put links to Anne's books in the show notes. They're available everywhere, Anne, aren't they?
Yes.
Pretty much anywhere you can get books, you can order them, and they're Waterstones, Blackwells,
Yes.
you name it, they're there. And we are out of time again. This is just, I know, we could go on forever, couldn't we?
We
But
could
we
indeed,
don't.
yeah.
We don't. We have to let Anne out.
Yes, I think a week was enough.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll lose that good review on TripAdvisor actually if we don't let her out now, won't we? Yeah, if we keep her out, if we let her go. Okay, I'll take the chain off the door.
Okay, you do that. There you go, Anne. You're free.
Thank goodness.
I was looking for something to make the sound effect, but funnily enough, I don't have any chains to hand.
No.
Dang. It was easier. Tape I found quite easily, but I can't find anything for a chain.
So thank you for stopping by, listeners. Thank you for sticking with us, and we hope that again this has been a fun episode for you. Shame Lisa won this round, but there you go. It's just one battle. It's not the war.
Are we keeping tabs? Have we got sort of a running? Have you got a running chart of?
I don't need to. I have a listener that's doing it for me.
You do?
I do.
Oh.
I do.
Oh, have you got like a little fan? Like not a little fan. I won't call them.
I
little
have a
fan,
listener.
You have a listener.
I do.
Who is keeping the scores?
Who's keeping my score? Yeah.
Or just your score, not mine.
No, both of us.
Well, Lisa's doing really badly because I haven't noted down any wins she's got. So, well, there you go then. Oh, thanks for sharing that one. Didn't know anything about that.
Not alone. Okay,
Not alone.
Remember, listeners, to subscribe wherever you're listening to. It makes a big deal for us. Remember Patreon. We're not sure which episode is going to be the next one, but you will find it out if you join Patreon. And also remember to follow the Red Rabbit.
You can see the scorecards probably there. Let's put up the running scorecard in there. Yeah.
Do I trust you to make it up though? Suddenly it'll be like Lisa won everything. Lisa won top trumps.
We're I don't know. We're somewhere in the teens in terms of episodes in, but yet somehow my score's 100 and yours is 5.
Yeah, I bet.
I don't know how that happened.
Anne, you are my witness.
I am.
We're all very mature, very grown up here. This is nothing like serial killer preschool that we were talking about earlier.
No.
We're very mature and demure.
Don't start. We're mindful too.
We're mindful. We're demure and we're mindful here.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Well, thank you, listeners, and have a good week. You'll hear us next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.